Here it is. Ah, yeah.
Okay, we're good. We're there.
All right. I'm ready when you
We're
are.
happening. What
Everything's
all the
rocking.
young people are wearing.
Rocking and rolling right now.
It is the Brad and Britt cast, our last one for this week. Thank you for joining us. 1:30 hour live Eastern time. For podcast listeners, it's later. If you're live with us here in Facebookville or YouTube County, you get to see the delight, not just listen to it. It's something, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's really exciting.
You lucky bastards.
Yeah. All right. Let's start local and stay local.
Ah,
Hey, there's a good idea.
That's cute. Yeah.
Hey, they don't know what that means in Montana, but it's
No.
okay.
One of the local TV stations does that. I'm sure they do it in your stupid market too, people. Somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that some station in every market says that now. The way this is my favorite. This is from 40 years ago. 40 years ago, WIBC in Indianapolis, major big AM kahuna there. They were calling themselves the official weather station.
I love it.
And it took about 2 seconds to realize that everywhere somebody. And by the way, think about what that means. The official weather station, according to who?
God.
According to what?
God came down and said, "This is the station I want my weather on." That's what he said.
Right. But just it's official.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Enough of that. We are stuck in the weeds.
Jeez.
We haven't even walked out the door yet, have we?
Can't even get the car out of neutral. Come on, let's get out of the driveway here, pal.
Hey, can we start with the snake story?
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
And there was a snake running around North Carolina, well, actually the Raleigh area, for a couple of days. It's a bar something. It's like the most poisonous thing in the history of poison things, right?
It's known as the zebra cobra. That's what we were calling
it,
the zebra cobra, because it has these unusual markings on it that make it look very similar to a zebra.
Yeah. Okay, so they finally caught it on Thursday morning, and they did, and of course, since everything we do here, Britt, is about me or about you, I will now admit that last week I caught a mouse in a glue trap in my garage. It did happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like very exciting. You put the glue trap down. It's just a little tub. It's a little platform of glue.
And he gets stuck. It's all he does.
It goes weeks and weeks and shit. It's not gonna and then one day you walk out, and there it is, little tiny mouse. Boy, I felt good about it. And when I picked it up, of course, by my hand, and then didn't wash my hands and ate later, I thought, this is probably not going to hurt me.
It's okay.
It's dead. But they caught the snake, and they got it all. But here's the point. This kind of snake is legal in North Carolina. It is legal to have.
Yeah.
You're supposed to go by all these rules. You're supposed to put a sign up on the case saying, extremely venomous snake. You're supposed to lock it up. And then I thought, wait a minute. Haven't I heard this before regarding something else? And I thought, yeah, guns. Guns, of course, are legal too. And you're supposed to follow set rules so that they don't get into the hands of children, so that they don't blow their own heads off or kill you. And I thought, well, wait a minute. At least, no matter what you think of, no matter how squishy you are on firearms, on the First Amendment, Second Amendment, whatever, at least at some level, yes, you could protect yourself and your family with a gun. Doesn't happen all the, but with a poisonous snake, it's not a defensive weapon. It doesn't help you. It can only harm you, especially when there are lots of other snakes that you could have as pets. Hey, vote for Phil Berger. vote for Pat McCrory. You get the same effect. You see what I did there?
I see what you did.
Yeah. But apparently the legality of this kind of snake goes back to the rules that were made, I think, in the 40s or 50s,
right,
about snake handlers, religious wackos.
Oh, that's funny.
Nutballs, because their religious beliefs involved snake handling, right, to prove how manly you were.
So we wanted to protect those guys. We wanted to make sure that those guys would always be able to have their snakes around and handle those snakes and do all that shit. Okay, that makes sense.
So, like everything else, and this is, of course, the Brad to Britt setup. Why do we still have those rules in place? Because
we do it that way because we've always done it that way.
Always done. Can't change it. Cannot change it. Cannot make an alteration. Right?
Nope.
So on we go, and we're lucky that nobody got bit by this one. Right? Nobody died. Nobody really got hurt. But it's still stupid. It's just stupid. It becomes more of an embarrassment that you're in North Carolina, because then someone says, well, I heard about this snake story, because it did make it to the national level.
It did. It very much did. Yeah, you don't get that every day. So yeah,
it got out there. Now contrast that with the intelligent, mature way the Nicole Hannah-Jones situation resolved itself.
Wow.
And I have a theory on this. So that they voted, what was it, 8-4, 7-4 on Wednesday to give her tenure. After all this, after all the hand wringing and the disguised, not very well racism, the fury over the critical race theory that she apparently embodied more than any walking human being ever, and she was going to inflict these thoughts on these poor little college kids who just wouldn't know better, and the next thing you know, they're out there killing white people and feeling good about it.
Sure.
All kinds of crazy shit. But
that's what happens.
So they were standing up. They were not going to give her tenure, and she gets it. Number one, I have a question. If I were her, I would say thanks, but no thanks, because this is equivalent. This is equivalent to the wedding that you were going to be invited to. You knew you were going to be invited. You were best friends with the groom. He was your best friend growing up, and then suddenly you're getting married and you don't get an invitation. You don't know why. You're not sure why. And then the last week before then you get an invitation. Fuck, I don't want to go. I'm not interested in going now. I don't know why she accepts this here. But aside from that, okay, maybe she's a bigger person than I am. Obviously she is, and she's going to accept it, and life will go on. But I think the vote is really interesting, because you got to believe that the 4 people who voted against her knowing full well that they were going to lose and she was going to get the tenure, but they could then go back and say to whoever their patrons are in the Republican Party, we did all we could.
I voted my conscience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they get it both ways, because they couldn't be decent and make it a unanimous vote to at least attempt to restore the reputation of the University of North Carolina as a bastion of the free exchange of ideas. They didn't want to go that far. That would have been a little bit too much. So they held their ground, and 4 of them voted no. So they get it both ways. There you go.
Well, but again, going back to the infamous Brad Krantz marriage analogy, if I have to hold you down to the ground and it takes this long for you to make the right decision, which is, and then does it count? I mean, obviously these people did this not because that they've had a chance to look at their position and gosh, maybe they did it because it created such a furor and they were at least the folks that voted for her, they were somewhat shamed into it. I mean, there were a couple probably that would have voted for her anyway, but the people who kind of switched it around and said, all right, fuck it, she can have it, essentially did it because of the bad pub that the university has gotten for the past month or so.
Well, there is something to be said for doing the right thing for the wrong reason. And this would be that case. They did the right thing, but many of them did it for the wrong reason, which is what you just described, which is trying to save whatever dwindling reputation UNC has. But this, fortunately, will probably pass. The only question, and by the way, that guy Hussman, the guy down in Texas, the guy who gave $25 million so that they could name the UNC journalism school, he was fairly gracious, actually.
Really?
And said, yeah, and I'd like to meet with her, and let's just go from here, and no recriminations. And I mean, he did say kind of all the right things. It's almost as if he's ahead of the people who voted no, because he's making the case. He's claiming, and I was reading the Daily Tar Heel version of this story. He's saying he never thought that someone should have a big enough dick to swing around just because they have given $25 million to veto something like this, even though he acted like it. His pronouncements seem to be that way, that if you don't do what I say, maybe we misunderstood him. I'm not sure. But I think he's trying to distance himself from the whole controversy too. And the only question is, will UNC win 5 basketball games next year? That's really, they can go back to that now, right?
The new coach, it's going to be a big deal. They've got Armando coming back for his season, so it's going to be, they feel pretty good about all that. But yeah, that's what you move on to.
That's what you go back to, what your real priorities are in Chapel Hill.
Well, meanwhile, for those folks who were protesting and said that people of color have been treated shabbily by this university, they've got their evidence that this has happened to someone, and eventually it was, fuck it, we'll go ahead and have it. Meanwhile, I don't know. I guess the time has come and gone for our friend Eric Muller, and he is no longer with UNC Press, and they didn't save his ass and all that. He's done. He's been dosed.
There is that story too. And as you said, what you were saying a moment ago, I thought, oh boy, this is just going to be like, well, we elected Obama president. There's no more racism. Yeah. What's going to satisfy you people already? And
right.
This could be the same argument. Plug in the name, plug in the position. Well, she finally got her tenure. What's the big deal?
Yeah. Why don't you guys just shut up?
Bitching. Quit whining. Shut up and move on. Yeah.
You guys need to just shut up about this entire situation.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I got up on this morning, which as we speak was a Thursday morning. And the first thing I did was I looked at it's about 42 minutes long, the New York Times version, the heavily researched, perfectly produced, with new angles, new video, and great schematic drawings of the U.S. Capitol on what happened on January 6th. If you think you've seen it all, if you think you've seen the same video of the one guy pressed up against the glass, I don't need to see this anymore. No, you need to watch this, because they present it in a linear fashion. They match up different events that were going on simultaneously. They really make it clear. And I can't believe I'm going to say this. They make it clear, even to people who thought it was a walk in the park and just a typical tourist day at the Capitol, that what, it really wasn't. As if I mean what I just said here, as if that needed to be proven. But we'll go in circles and circles. But the good thing about that piece of video, that in and of itself, this is one of those things. If you have a relative, if you have a friend, if you have someone in your family who doesn't think it was a big deal, who wants to buy that calendar that the Republican Party is going to produce that will show January 2022 as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. There won't even be a January 6th on it. It's not a big deal. What's the thing? If you could tie them up in a chair and pry their eyes open, like in A Clockwork Orange, right, and force them to watch this, and then have them look at you and say, now what do you think? That would probably convince, 2 or 3% of them, because clearly the compelling video evidence, the obvious shock of really what looks like whatever your favorite movie was from the 40s or 50s, showing medieval fighting, just hammer and tong, Game of Thrones. I mean, that's what it looks like. It's so insanely sick. It's so vile. It's so mean. They're so nasty. They're so revved up like rabid dogs with venom dripping from their mouths in what they were saying they were going to do. If anybody doubts that if they could have gotten their hands on Mike Pence, that they wouldn't have killed him, forget hanging. He would have never made it that far.
No,
they would have never made it to the gallows. They would have killed him.
They would have ripped him to shreds, or anybody else that they could have gotten their hands on, for sure.
I mean, it appears from what that Pence and Pelosi were the number one and number two villains, maybe not even in that order. We don't know. But neither of them would have survived being caught and cornered. And the work that was done, when you pull back, this is just my take on what I've seen and what I know. When you pull back and realize that, quote unquote, only 5 people, is it 5 or 6, died in total, it's a miracle. And there are a lot of things that need to be put in order and accounted for as to why it took 4 hours for the National Guard to be put in there, why it took a long time even for the Metropolitan Police to show up after the frantic calls on the radio phones when it was obvious the Capitol Police were out. Man, there's no doubt about that. But on balance, this was a miraculous job of defending the United States Capitol by people who put their lives on the line as much as a soldier in the deepest, darkest war place you can think of. It was that bad. And it was so prolonged because most of the time, confrontations between police and protesters, they may last a few minutes, sometimes just a few moments. This was hour after hour after hour. I mean, you're talking about from about 1 p.m. till 6:30, 7 o'clock that evening before you had some sense that the Capitol was secured and the people had been driven back once the National Guard folks showed up with full riot gear on. I mean, there was going to be no messing around with them, but of course they should have been there hours before. And then of course, they should have been there the day before or the week before. I mean, we understand that. But you know what? There needs to be a select committee to investigate that, don't you think?
There should be.
There should be. And Republicans and Democrats should get together because they all must want to know what happened on that day, right? Because, they were all threatened. Okay, I'll stop being a dope here and let's deal with reality. Republicans don't want to know what really happened. Number one, they were complicit, too many of them. That's the first thing that you realize has to be true as to why they're so adamant against a regular select committee and now the Democratic controlled version of it by Nancy Pelosi. And she's already gotten Liz Cheney to be one of the Republicans. I think they can have up to 5. Kevin McCarthy says, hey, Republican fuckfaces, get in line. If any of you participate in this, you're dead to me. You're out.
Right.
You're done. Now, that's even more desperate. That's even more crazy. And I went back, and the great thing about your Google machine is you can find this stuff out in about 3.2 seconds. I thought, well, what happened when the Republicans were screaming about Benghazi and they were going to vote on whether there would be a committee to investigate Benghazi? And guess what? 7 Democrats voted in the big vote. It was 210 to 100, but there were 7 Democratic votes. Okay. And when the committee came to be, guess who was on that committee? The Benghazi. You had Adam Schiff was on there. Elijah Cummings was on that Benghazi committee. So the Democrats did participate in that. They didn't boycott it. They knew it was bullshit, but that's the system that we have. And back then, the Republicans controlled the House. They got to pick, for the most part, what they were going to investigate. That's the way it works.
And it went on for years. It went on for a long time.
But for some reason, in this particular case, no, that doesn't matter. That doesn't count. And I would argue, and wow, I'm going to go out on a limb on this, the near overthrow of the United States government, our system, our way of life, our ability to elect leaders being challenged and possibly destroyed right there on worldwide television, maybe a little bit more important than a bad situation that got out of control in Benghazi, Libya, resulting in the deaths of 4 Americans. I know I'm really going out there on a limb on that one, but apparently Republicans are sure that Benghazi still worse than what happened on January 6th, because they're going to have to answer for this. They're going
particularly because it could happen again. I don't think there's any question that this was just if we don't quash this or at least look into it, then it's going to be something that could rear its ugly head again for sure.
Britt, I have no reason to believe that they don't want it to happen again.
Well, perhaps.
Because if you didn't want it to happen again, you would want to know exactly what led up to this. And we know what led up to this. The words of Donald Trump, the attitude of Donald Trump, the comfort and support Donald Trump gave to all these disparate groups of whack jobs like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. They all had their contingents there. They were all part of this, and they all communicated. And it was planned. It was not a spontaneous accident that people marched down to the Capitol after Trump had spoken, and Trump, being the courageous leader that he was, urged them to go there, and then he ducked behind the curtain and ran away. Being the powerful, wonderful,
I think there's a lot more about that in those books that are coming up, the Bender book and the Wolf book, about how exactly instrumental he was in orchestrating this and trying to get these people to march to the Capitol.
I'm sure they're in those books, which you must be getting a royalty on because you keep mentioning them.
I certainly hope that people buy them from shop.bradandbritt.com, which is our Amazon store. You can subscribe to Audible through the same thing.
Good pivot. I love that.
So yes, I would be getting a royalty from that for sure if you buy it from shop.bradandbritt.com, because those things are available there, and you can sign up for Audible through the same thing. Which brings me to this little nugget here. Speaking of which, Donald Trump had a little town hall with Sean Hannity. I don't know how Sean Hannity was able to get that exclusive interview with the former president of the United States, Donald Trump. And he told Sean Hannity he has come to a decision about running for 2024. Now, he was very coy and didn't say whether it was a yes or was a no, but he has made a very serious decision about running in 2024 for the presidency.
I love that when he teases you and keeps you tuned in. That is so clever. That is so. When is he going to tell us? In 2 weeks? Is he going to tell us after he's reinstalled as president in August? You like that? You notice how they completely moved the goalposts because no touchdown was scored back in March. He was not put back into the presidency. And now suddenly it's August. And they all just say, yeah, it's going to be August. Right? I'm going to cut my grass in August. Okay. All right, fine. But Trump is not going to be president in August. Not going to have, but they think it's true.
Well, are we going to have our endless debate on this show about whether he can win in 2024? Because I believe he can win in 2024. I think he can. I'm not going to say I think his chances are no less than 50-50. And obviously there's a lot of ground to be covered between now and then, but I think there are a lot of people that believe in this man and are buying his bullshit. Now, obviously your argument about where does he find one more vote, et cetera, but here's another reason that he might actually have an easier time in 2024. There it is. Supreme Court upholding Arizona's voting restrictions. So it just became a little bit harder to beat Donald Trump in 2024. And any Republican running in a statewide election, of course, these are rules that are not going to just apply to Arizona, but we've established what they call precedent. that you can fuck over some of the votes and restrict some of the votes to some folks in certain ways. And that's going to be the key to the Republicans winning any elections going forward, right?
I half agree, but I largely disagree because of the year 2020, because Republicans were already starting to do all they could, and they couldn't do a damn thing about it. They couldn't do what happened. They couldn't reverse what was happening in Georgia. They couldn't do it. And these kinds of restrictions, as annoying as they are, I think this has to do with getting your absentee ballot in on time and all those kinds of things that the Supreme Court is now saying, well, that's totally fair because that's not discriminatory against black people, because white people could get their absentee ballot in late too. So it's completely fair. And they've decided to completely disregard the fact that historically, when you look back over which groups are more harmed because they might be subject to whatever rules are being made in a deleterious way, that it always seems to be, for some reason, minorities and people who are traditionally identifiable as Democratic voters. They're saying, well, since we're going to be fair and suck to everybody, just because being fair and sucking also can affect people who aren't of that minority, we're going to allow it to go through. And
but at the very least, it emboldens places like Georgia and Michigan and other places that have rolled out all of these voting restrictions, and it makes it way harder for Democrats to win going forward.
Well, I understand that, but it also makes you more determined.
I hope so.
In Georgia, it didn't work. In Arizona, it didn't work. In Wisconsin, it didn't work.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania, it didn't work. And this is terrible. It was a 6-3 decision. The only thing I haven't seen today, and I don't know whether this is the last day of their session, I don't see the retirement announcement from Justice Stephen Breyer, so he can be replaced by a justice that would be named by Joe Biden, because if Breyer sticks around into the next session and the Republicans take over the Senate, Joe Biden could nominate God and or Jesus to the Supreme Court, and Republicans would not have a hearing, and they would not vote him in. So,
Mitch McConnell has said that it is traditional that in the last 3.5 years of a presidential term, the president can't nominate anybody. That's the new rule.
No, you're wrong. I think he said in the first 4 years.
The first 4 years of the president's term, it's been traditional that they're not allowed to nominate anybody. Oh, that's fun. That was kind of sort of a little bit of the criticism against Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? For a while, they said, well, she should have done it.
People were mad at her then, and then she went off and died. And
damn her.
Damn her. But she really could have left 4 years earlier with her legacy well intact.
Right.
The last few, nobody remembered. Boy, in the last year, she really did blank. There's no possible way that whoever would have replaced her, nominated and approved by the Democrats in the Senate when they did control it with Obama as the president early in his first term.
To be fair to the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which I think is, it's solid. She couldn't have known the American people would be stupid enough to put Donald Trump in to the highest office in the land based on an antiquated system called the Electoral College. I mean, there were a couple things that she probably couldn't have foreseen.
I disagree with you. If anybody was cognizant of the risks of not retiring and not getting your replacement in there who you would want appointed by the president that you want, because anything can and might happen, it would be her. It isn't about, everybody thought Hillary was going to win, so she didn't retire. You can't do that. You can't go
to foresee that someone would win.
I think it's fair to just say she had an ego. She had an ego. They all do. I understand that.
Doesn't the major
her ego in the end, you hate to think that, wow, all the great shit she did
Well,
you know,
don't you think that
on the way out the door hit her in the ass? And
the major blame does fall within the realm of the folks who put Donald Trump into office? I mean, that has to be the major blame. Certainly there were things that she could have done, and obviously I just don't know. You could have foreseen that 4 million people would have voted for the other person who lost, who didn't get the office. I mean, there was a lot of things that were conspiring here against us, but I think the major blame has to be put on those people that voted for Donald Trump, particularly. I don't know how many votes it was, particularly in Wisconsin and those states that finally put him over the top.
But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. If we've learned anything in the last 10, 15 years, it's you got to make hay while the sun is shining.
Wow.
You have no margin for error to wait and think that things will not only not get worse than they are, but they will remain the same. And if I don't quit now, in a couple of years, it'll be fine, and there'll still be a Democratic president there. And even if you want to give Ruth Bader Ginsburg a pass, you can't do that with Stephen Breyer. You can't even come close.
I'd say that's fair.
What the fuck are you doing? You have no standing. Breyer.
I'll grant you that one. Particularly since you've seen what's happened in the past 5 years in this country. You've had a front row seat to that. Yeah, I'll give you that. Trump's path to the nomination in 2024 may have gotten just a little bit easier. Here's Governor DeSantis in Florida hailing a very supportive Joe Biden in wake of the building collapse down in Surfside. You recognize the severity of this tragedy from day one. I'm assuming among Republican voters, giving a compliment to Joe Biden now puts him out of the running for the Republican nomination, Brad. And he's done. Well, he's toast. Donald Trump now has a clear path. It's either Donald Trump or Tucker Carlson as the Republican nominee in 2024.
I checked my Bradley dictionary for this. What just happened? And it turns out that there is a descriptive verb as to what Ron DeSantis just did. He Chris Christie'd.
Oh, he's done.
Joe Biden. Because Chris Christie was seen walking hand in hand with Barack Obama down the beach after Superstorm Sandy, and was very gracious and very nice to Obama, and Obama was nice to him because they got together and knew that the coast of New Jersey needed to be rebuilt, and federal dollars were going to flow, and they acted like adults. Okay, so DeSantis is making the same mistake. God damn it, he's actually acting like a leader and an adult, and
which means he can't be a Republican nominee for president. There's no way. He's disqualified himself by acting. The Chris Christie thing was particularly galling to a lot of Republicans, but because it happened right before the 2012 election. It was within, I think, just about a month of the 2012 election when this Romney guy, we got him, and now Chris Christie showed a little bit of compassion or some, as you say, adult behavior toward Barack Obama, which was just so maddening to a lot of hardcore Republican voters, and that disqualified him from anything going forward. But to Chris Christie's credit, he's come back and become a major asshole in the past several years. So
that's true. He really has turned it around, hasn't he?
I mean, he's been a massive dick. For the most part. He's been a huge dick. So I mean, he didn't let this define himself.
Everything isn't identical to what it was, and in this case, I think that DeSantis, who's no dummy, no matter what I think of him, he's no dummy. He made the decision to depoliticize what will get politicized, because everything does, which is the collapse of this building, which, by the way, is not a Republican or a Democratic building last time I checked.
Right.
And had he snubbed the president, imagine what would that help him if he's running for president in 2 years? Would it make the citizens of Florida feel better about him? Among
Republican
voters,
voters,
fucking took the high road for once. I can't believe that
among Republican voters, among Republican voters, this is going to be seen as a negative. I'm sorry, there's no other way to look at it. I don't know if it's going to cost him 5%, 10%, whatever, but there's good. I mean, I can find Reddit threads for you right now where this son of a bitch sold us out, and there's going to be a certain number of people.
All right, there you go.
I mean,
the whole world is not Reddit threads. The whole world.
I would like to think that that's not true, but if you don't think that what happened on January the 6th was not controlled by a lot of fucking Reddit threads, There was a lot of that shit that goes into that stuff. If you don't think that electing Donald Trump was also done by a lot of people who were pissed off in their mom's basement, posting on Reddit threads, that's what was running the Republican Party, was pissed off people running on writing shit on message boards. And they're still the ones that are in control.
I understand that, but if you look at I'm just trying to think out loud here. If you look at the constituency in total of people who live not just in South Florida, but all the way up both coasts,
sure,
in buildings that look just like that one, I can guarantee you, I don't care how Republican the people are in those buildings, they welcome the President of the United States,
right,
showing interest, coming down there. Because, remember, if it was Trump, he would have just been sitting up there in Washington tweeting and attacking
Democrats in South Florida.
The Democrats in South Florida who let this happen. You're right. He would have just said some shit like that.
Absolutely.
So we use the phrase "we," meaning I, that DeSantis Chris Christie'd Biden, and I'm saying that just for cheap comedy's sake. I don't think the two cases are going to turn out to be the same.
I don't think so either. I mean, I hope they're not, because it's nice that these flaming assholes like Ron DeSantis or even a Bill Barr, at a moment of truth and a point of inflection, do the right thing. Even Mike Pence, who's been a fantastically terrible asshole. Even Raffensperger in Georgia, who's been a tremendous asshole. There was a moment of point of inflection and a moment of truth for each of these people where they went, I'm out. I'm not gonna do your bidding. I'm gonna be what I'm supposed to be in this office. And it happened a few times. Now, at some point, is there going to be some dick in one of those positions that's going to go, no, I'm going to go ahead and try to foment insurrection. I'm going to try to be the biggest jerk possible. Yeah, that's probably going to happen. And I think it probably has happened. But I think going forward, you put somebody in a position like that, you can't say Bill Barr at a moment of truth goes, these claims of election fraud are bullshit. Well, I'm glad he did that. Again, it doesn't change what he did while he was Donald Trump's lackey boy for several years. But, I'm glad that he did what he did and he spoke out against it. And I'm glad that Raffensperger at a point of inflection didn't fold under Donald Trump. And I'm glad that Mike Pence didn't go to, the Capitol and try to F up democracy. I'm glad that he eventually did. Now,
I think
he's out there. He's out there on this.
Hang on. I hear what you're saying, but I think you're still giving these people way too much credit,
maybe,
for the simple reason that everything that they did that appears to be, well, finally, in the moment of truth, they did the right thing. Everything they did in those moments was about self-preservation. It was about thinking, shit, well, the history books are going to kick my ass. Yeah. I don't need that. I don't need everyone with my family name for the next 50 years to be trashed because they were associated with me. Again, these are people doing the right things for the wrong reason. They got in positions where they really had no choice except to destroy the country. Wow, thank you for not completely destroying the country at the very last minute. Okay, you're on the 1 yard line. Thank you very much for making a little goal line stand there for a play or two.
When you talk about legacies, and that brings up an interesting point, because I didn't want the week to end without us acknowledging that Donald Rumsfeld, the former Secretary of Defense, dying at the age of 88. They've done on the Slow Burn podcast, they've done kind of a deep dive into exactly what led up to the Iraq War, which I think conventional wisdom now, even among a lot of Republicans, is that fighting the Iraq War was a massive mistake in terms of the loss of human life, the injuries, the American esteem, the money that was spent. I mean, any metric that you'd like to use. And Donald Rumsfeld was,
him and Cheney, got together, and this may not be the big lie, but it's a damn large one that they pushed. And I can guarantee you, I don't know when the last time they polled this, but if you poll the American people, who flew the planes into the Twin Towers in the Pentagon and to the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania on September 11, 2001. I'll bet you a shockingly large number of people in the United States think it was the Iraqis, don't you?
Yeah.
So
Donald Rumsfeld is one of the worst defense secretaries, again, by any metric that we've ever had in this country. A lot of what happened in Iraq leading up to and certainly following the war is on his shoulders. But he was one who continued to, after he left office, publish books about his point of view, try to polish his legacy, all of this garbage that happened in the years following. But the true legacy of Donald Rumsfeld is that he was a very awful Secretary of Defense, and some of the judgments that he made following, particularly the end of the end, when what we were told was the end of the Iraq, when Saddam Hussein was deposed and then killed by the United States. Some of those decisions that were made helped prolong the agony and helped cost thousands of people their lives, and cost America a lot in terms of just about anything that I mentioned.
To me, he is the embodiment of the super confident, arrogant elitist.
Yeah.
And I know this is a shocker to a lot of folks, not to you, but, elitists aren't just liberals. Did you know that?
No, I didn't
Have
know
you heard that? But Rumsfeld was a well-spoken, glib, funny guy, could get the one-liners out, forever. People will remember and reuse and recycle there are known knowns, there are unknown knowns, and there are unknown known knowns, blah, 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 about everything. I mean, it's a great line, but it was just obnoxious back then because it went right alongside with the quip when someone said, "Well, shit, we don't have enough weapons, we don't have enough armor or you go to war with the army that you have, not the army that you want."
Right.
Which is like throwing up your hands and saying, "Oh shit, go in there, Bobby. We don't have any more bullets for you, but doggone it, maybe wrestle him to the ground. Maybe get out a knife and slice him up. We'll be getting some bullets in 6 months. Can you get back to me then?"
Right.
So he was just one step, maybe more than one step, too glib. And I have a feeling that this is a guy who was positive that he was smarter than every president he ever served.
There's no question.
Because remember, he was in Congress, right, for a couple terms. And before you know it, he's getting buddy with Dick Cheney. And Dick Cheney brings him into Jerry Ford's White House. And the next thing you know, he's chief of staff and he's defense secretary back then. And then, 30 years later, he's defense secretary again. I mean, he did it twice. Is there anybody else that's had 2 terms as defense secretary?
But the second time was exceptionally devastating for America, particularly in a 21st century.
Was Cheney defense secretary twice?
I know it was just the one time, I think, but it was just the second time was so devastating in a post 9/11 world that we decided to attack Iraq. And then again, there are a number of quotes from Donald Trump that are going to go down. The glibness that ended up costing a lot of people their life. The knowable, unknowable stuff. I really remember that one. When there was lawlessness around Baghdad after Saddam was thrown. Oh, people of free will are allowed to do bad things. Remember that one?
I thought it was shit happens or stuff happens. Did he say stuff happens?
I think he said
I think he played the stuff happens.
And then people of free will are allowed to do bad things. And then there was the fact-based community. I believe that was a direct quote from him. There were so many of these things, but I didn't want the time to go by. It's just dreadful. On that Slow Burn podcast, they do talk to Paul Jerry Bremer, who was in charge of the Coalition Provisional Authority. He's one
of your favorite guys, isn't he?
And who still, again, it tries to obfuscate and excuse how awful he was based on their first 2 rules, which were, A, if you were ever in the Ba'ath Party, you have no money. You will never get a job with us. Go home and die. And Coalition Provisional Authority rule number 2 was, if you're in the Iraqi military, you will never get a job with us. Go home and die. By the way, take your weapons with you. And it was that was the basis of ISIS. That was what eventually formed ISIS, because those people went home and they just had time on their hands to go hate Americans and figure out ways to kill them. And this man still, and he got a medal. Want to make sure we remember that Jerry Bremer got a medal. So don't forget that. He still continues to try to defend what we were not ready to do. We were never ready. We were always ready to go in there and break stuff. We were never ready to go in there and figure out what was next for Iraq, what the next move was for who was going to run Iraq, and to try to figure out and try to mediate thousands of years of tribal conflicts. We were never equipped to do that. And we certainly weren't equipped to do it with 20-year-olds who were interns at the Heritage Foundation, which is what we tried to do. You know, these are all things that people should never, ever, 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 ever forget. So Donald Rumsfeld, fare thee well. We don't want to let today get by without talking about the big news, which has been forthcoming all week long. Top Trump executive Alan Weisselberg has surrendered to face charges. He was indicted by a grand jury, Brad, for his role in the Trump organization. And now there's that moment of inflection, that moment of truth. Is Alan Weisselberg eventually going to sing like a bird, or is he going to hang in there for his boy?
I don't know how he can, because I do believe that he and whatever legal team he has are up against the best in the business. They're up against people who've seen even bigger assholes than him before and broken them. And I think whatever you're hearing being speculated on what we're going to be hearing later on Thursday about the exact charges, I have to believe, you have to believe, that that's just the beginning. That's not the end. You're not going to put all your cards out on the table at first. When you're trying to squeeze somebody, what do? You turn up the heat in the pot a little bit more each time, and until that water's boiling, maybe the frog won't jump out. So I would think that, if you're talking about, are you willing to, I guess that gets down to, are you willing to go to prison? Are you willing to let your children go to prison for Donald Trump at this point? And I understand. I've heard the ex-daughter-in-law all over the place saying that Alan Weisselberg is a completely soulless human being who lives every moment to please Donald Trump. Sound familiar? Yeah, well, a lot of people are like that, but he was in the business, running the business for the most part, a lot of the time. And he was doing some of these illegal things, apparently, while Trump was president. This isn't statute of limitations kind of stuff from forever ago. And that's got to involve Don Jr. That's got to involve Eric Trump. That's got to involve Ivanka Trump. They're all involved in that company, or whatever it is. It's probably not really a company. It's like a lemonade stand that your 8-year-old has out on the street, but they got some good sharp graphics that says Trump Organization on it. That's about how sophisticated that company is, looks to me. So I think they're a little bit overmatched this time at Trump headquarters. Just like with Bernie Madoff. Man, if I said to you, you could get away with shit for 70 years, 70 plus years, but the last few years are going to kind of suck. We're going to find you out. Everything's going to fall apart. You're probably going to prison. Members of your family might even commit suicide. They don't want to be associated with you. Would you trade that? Now, would a 25-year-old Donald Trump say, yeah, I'd make that bargain. Give me 50 good years, and then I'll worry about it later. Well, you know what? In effect, he did that. And he did that through the training program that he went through with his father, Fred Trump, and with lawyer Roy Cohn of Joe McCarthy fame. He made the bargain, and he became an accidental president because he really didn't want to win. He didn't think he was going to win. And so now he's fucked up for 4 years as the president, and that was his big mistake. If he would have never become president, never run for president, none of this would have ever been found out. Nobody would have cared. And if their defense is going to be, well, the only reason you're going after me is because I was president, that I was a famous person. You never go after people for giving out goodies and homes and cars and all kinds of garnishments to their compensation. You never put people in prison for that. That's never a criminal thing. That's not going to wash. And I'll tell you why. Because they're going to come right back at them and say, guess what? If it was just that, you're right. We probably would have let it ride. But I think you have a 40 to 50 year criminal track record of lying about the value of property, lying for tax purposes, lying for insurance purposes, lying to get loans. The lies will be found out, and that's because the government has the professionals to dig into all these things that you and I and lots of other people have been saying for 5 years. Jesus, if we could just see his tax returns, if we could just tear apart his finances, maybe your brother or whoever else it is that thinks Trump was a successful businessman and deserved to be president, they might have a little bit of a second thought about him when they see what a typical garden variety thug criminal cheat that he was. Just maybe. And he got away with it for so long. And I think this time it's real.
So you do think that that's it? That's Weisselberg is going to eventually roll on his. I mean, I'm with you. I don't see what the upside is. Like the reason that Trump's stupid kids and other people is because they're, it's the gravy train. It's a paycheck, right? That's the reason they don't roll on their boy.
Alan, do you want to die in prison or do you not want to die in prison? How about that? How about that for a black and white up or down vote on yourself? Do you want to die in prison or do you not want to die in prison? Because that's what this is about. I mean, that guy must be in his 70s. He's easily in his 70s.
And again, even if he doesn't have the sense, you would hope that there's somebody in his life who loves him enough to go, come on, seriously. No,
there couldn't possibly be, Britt. If there was, it's not as if this guy didn't have other people, I'm sure, who must have said to him, what's the deal with Trump? And I'm sure he had an answer for them, and he had an intimidating way of making sure that they never brought it up again. But he knew, because everybody's known. Everybody has known. Michael Cohen knew. He knew. Is Michael Cohen some kind of great intellect? Is he Socrates? No. But he didn't want to spend a ton of time in prison either. And he finally got the religion. He did the right thing. Good for him. Weisselberg, wow. But what we'll never know, Britt, even if Weisselberg, at 4:00 this afternoon says, all right, you got me. Let's talk. Let's cut a deal. Maximum 3 years in prison for me, and I'll tell you everything you need to know. And even if he said that, we still are never going to know the real reason as to why they stuck with him for so long. And when I say they, I talk about the people you spoke of before, which is all the voters, all the people who went for the scam and deluded themselves and went along with this guy. I mean, I really feel like we're kind of akin to, Berlin has been invaded now. The American troops are coming from this direction. The Russian troops are coming from this other direction. It's over. Berlin has fallen. Germany is falling. And Adolf has decided to cash in his frequent miles points on the bunker down there, and he's about to blow his head. I mean, we're at that point.
You either stay in the bunker, either stay in the bunker, or you figure it out at this point, right?
Yeah. So, how about that? So anyway, so we're done until Monday,
right?
And so who knows what will have changed by then. We have actually Monday. Are we gonna take Monday off? That's the 4th of July holiday.
Yes, off on Monday because we're gonna be partying so hard and blowing fireworks and stuff, and we're gonna be blowing some of our fingers off and stuff. So we'll try to recover, wrap our fingers up, and get back to business on Tuesday.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. That sounds good.
And everybody have a happy 4th.
What is the difference between a gunshot and a firework sound?
There's none. They sound exactly the same. And anytime you hear fireworks, it's always gunfire. It's always
okay.
Just
all right.
Make sure you call your local 911 center and insist that you know everything about guns.